Welcome to Burn the Ship, the podcast that helps entrepreneurs go all in on their business, and we introduce them to professionals that can help them to do so. Today, we have a very special guest. Lance, how are you doing today?
I'm great, Rod. Thank you.
Good, good. Please introduce yourself and the name of your business.
My name is Lance Cox. I own Bell Tower Funeral Home and Inland Mortuary Services, and I'm a co-owner of Las Vegas Mortuary Transport.
Awesome. We so look forward to learning more about your businesses. But before that, we want to learn a little bit more about your story. And we understand that time is one of our most valuable resources. So tell us a little bit about your journey, Lance.
Thank you. So, even though my industry is maybe unique to a lot of your listeners, I think that my story has a lot that can be useful across the board in any industry. And I began in the funeral industry 26 years ago. And I found myself several years ago working for one of the largest corporations. It's an international corporation that owns thousands of funeral homes. And I'd had an opportunity to become a manager. It would have required me to move my family to a different state. And I remember in the interview process for that position, one of the questions I was asked was what my 5-year plan was. And my answer was that I didn't have a plan, that my plan was to perform to the best of my ability in my current position and then watch for opportunities as they came. The interviewer didn't like that answer. And he explained to me that that's really not a plan at all, and that I needed to have, uh, better, clear goals. But I stuck with my plan.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got that job and I became a manager. And about 6 months later, I got another promotion. And what I found was the more promotions I got, even though I made more money, the less happy I was.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the benefits to managing should be the ability to manage in a way that you see fit. But I found I didn't have the freedom to do that. One of the one of the services that funeral homes require, of course, are that when a person passes, they need to be transported from the place of death to the appropriate facility. And we were using a third party contractor to provide those services. And there was only one in town, and everybody used them, but nobody was happy with them. And so I saw an opportunity, and we had just purchased a home, and my wife was pregnant, and it was probably the dumbest time that I could have quit my corporate job with the steady income and the regular paychecks to go out on my own. But I did. And I took my life savings, which at that point was about $1,500, and I purchased some equipment and I financed 3 vehicles
Okay.
and I started this trade company. What's interesting is my first contract was the corporation that I had quit working for. And within the next year, they had paid out approximately 3 times what they were paying me as a manager. And, had I gone to my boss and said, I'd like a 300% raise, that never would have happened.
Right.
But for some reason, they were willing to pay that to a third party rather than their own employees. And so I did it the old-fashioned way. I called up other funeral homes and I knocked on doors and I sat down with other owners and introduced myself and offered my services. And things continued to grow. Eventually, I was the only business in town left that offered that particular service, and the fleet grew and the company grew. As I did that and I began to network with other markets and I saw other needs, I took advantage of those opportunities. So I started a branch in Seattle. There was a company there in Seattle that offered the same services, but they had kind of become too big for being able to serve their customers well. What I found there in that market was plenty of customers, but a really competitive labor market. And it was really difficult for me to maintain employees because as soon as I would hire and train one, somebody would steal them. And so after about a year of that, I pulled out of that market. It wasn't a complete failure, but it wasn't worth the time. and energy and money that I'd put into it. Shortly thereafter, I had one of my employees, he and his wife were going to move to Las Vegas. And he said, I want to do the same kind of work down there that I do for you. Can you help me find a similar company? And so I said, sure. I started calling around to different funeral homes in the Las Vegas market and said, who do you use for your transportation needs? And they said, nobody. We do it ourselves. And I came to find out that there was not a business like mine in the entire city of Las Vegas.
Mm.
And so I said to my employee who was moving down there, I said, I see an opportunity for us. And so we went down to Las Vegas and we purchased equipment and vehicles and we started meeting with funeral home owners and offering our services and everybody said no.
Oh.
They said we've done this ourselves for a long time. We've never needed a third party or a contractor to provide these services. And I said, and to me, a no is just a not yet. And so I said, that's okay. I said, but if you get into a pinch or if you have a problem, give us a call. And I told my now business partner down there, I said, I give it a month because there will come a day when they will be over busy and understaffed. And you just have to be prepared to be the hero.
Mm-hmm.
And once you do that once, then they'll be a customer for life. And so that's exactly what happened. And within a matter of months, we grew that business to the same size as my original business. We're currently still the only business in Las Vegas that offers that service. And so, what I found as things continued to progress, I found that there were other needs that my clients needed that weren't being provided by anybody else. And so I saw an opportunity to provide those services in addition to the transportation. One of my customers, which was a funeral home, had asked, and it was in a different state, had asked if I was interested in purchasing his funeral home. And I said, nope, I'm sure not. I'm plenty busy.
Mm-hmm.
And but I talked to my wife about it, and one of the things that my transportation business didn't offer was any kind of long-term assets, something that we could someday sell
Mm-hmm.
and move away from. And so we decided to purchase the funeral home. That was in 2020. And one thing I learned is that I'm really comfortable with liquid funds. I like to be able to pay all my bills, personal and business, and still see money in the bank. The problem is that money in the bank is worthless. For one thing, it's losing value because of inflation, and secondly, it's not working for you. It's not doing anything for you.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened is, as money was building in the bank, I realized I needed to do something smarter with it. So I began to purchase some commercial and residential properties and use those as assets as well. And it seems like every few years I see a new need and I see a new opportunity, and I'm able to invest in those things. And so uh, it's been a really good journey, and it's all worked because of my original goal, which the interviewer told me was not a good goal.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so I'll just repeat that goal, which was um, do the best in the position you're in now, to the best of your ability, and then watch for opportunities. And I've repeated that over and over again. I've continued to try to do the best I could in my given position, and when an opportunity comes along, I take it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that part of your journey with us. Of course, there's a couple questions that come up after me listening to you. Now, 26 plus years ago, there was a litany of opportunities for you to take on. What made you go into the funeral business originally? Did you have influence from family members, or was it just an opportunity that you saw and you took it from there? Tell us how you got started overall.
Well, it's crazy. Clear back when I was 14 years old, I went with a church youth group on a tour of a funeral home as part of a career night.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I was sold. I said, I think I want to do this. I found the whole thing to be meaningful
Mm-hmm.
and important work. And of course, at 14, my friends said, you're crazy.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
so I started right out of high school, and my first job, I was the guy that swept the parking lot and raked the leaves and washed the cars.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's important. When I first started my transport business, I was the boots on the ground. I was sleep deprived. I missed holidays with my kids. Um, my phone rang 24/7. And then at some point, I grew to a point that I could have a manager.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important to know what that point is, because I don't think you can grow if you remain the guy with the boots on the ground. At some point, you've got to recognize that you can't do both.
Mm-hmm.
You can't grow the business or expand if all of your time is spent on the front lines.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now, a current theme that you have shared throughout this entire story is looking for the opportunity when it presents itself. Now, that is what we call vision in a lot of the different circles that I run in. What helped you have that focus of seeing an opportunity, evaluating that opportunity, but then more importantly, advancing on that opportunity? How did you come up with those skills?
My first advice is, and it's just from my personal experience, but is to begin where you are.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people have the desire to be entrepreneurs and business owners, and they find themselves looking for opportunities in which they have zero experience, knowledge, or background. And and that's okay if you want to take that risk, but start where you are. Whatever your job is currently, and it doesn't matter what your position is. If you're a greeter at Walmart, it doesn't matter. Look for the opportunities with what you know, with what's immediately around you. And secondly, recognize that opportunities are always inconvenient.
Mm-hmm.
An opportunity does not mean that it falls into your lap, and it doesn't mean that it's going to be an easy transition. Like I said, the first time I quit my job and started my business, we had just bought a house and my wife was pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when I bought the funeral home, it was in 2020, right in the middle of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
So opportunities aren't convenient, and they don't come to you, but they present themselves, and you have to see them and take advantage of them. And then once you begin that mindset, there's no end to the opportunities that are there. You have to be smart enough to choose which ones are going to be the most successful the earliest. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe the other opportunities can come later,
Mm-hmm.
but you've got to start with the low hanging fruit.
Yeah. Now, with these opportunities, you were able to recognize them. My question, as we stay in this particular segment, is due diligence wise, is it something where it was laid on your heart and you said, I'm going to go after it regardless? Or did you spend time doing a bunch of research and saying, okay, it will have a quick turn, so I will take it on? What was your process or mindset when you took those on?
Yeah, so you've I don't think there's anything that replaces good old-fashioned networking.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is you've got to ask the questions. Go to everybody else that could be potential customers and ask the questions. What are you currently doing for for this service? What are you paying? Are you happy with the service? Why are you not happy with the service? The I have seen others try to take advantage of the same opportunities I did without any background research at all.
Mm-hmm.
And at least for me, you don't know if it's an opportunity or not until you've done that research.
Mm-hmm.
But don't be afraid to pick up the phone. Don't be afraid to send an email. Don't be afraid to knock on a door and ask those questions.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much because again, it is challenging because people get wrapped up in it. You shared it as far as, getting to the point where you can get to a manager. I always joke around in my industry. We deal a lot with lawn care, and I say you're not going to be able to grow the business staying on that zero turn.
That's
You're going
right.
to have to get off of it and go forward from there. So I definitely appreciate you sharing and highlighting that, and more importantly, telling us about your journey. Now, you've told us how you've gotten there and what you are doing. In this particular segment, I want you to go a little bit more detail about the businesses, where if the people who are watching today need those services, tell us what it is that you're doing with the funeral homes. And I know yours is expanded because you have businesses in different states. So tell us a little bit more about, who are those ideal people you're trying to get in front of? What are those services you're providing? That way we can try to support you on your businesses.
Sure. So the funeral homes themselves are always going to be local businesses.
Hmm.
It's one of the businesses you can't outsource overseas.
Hmm.
Um, and so you've got the business, the funeral home business, which serves the public, and then you've got the trade services which I provide to other funeral homes. What I have to offer is through all of these things, I consider myself somewhat of an expert in the field. And that's, I think, really where other funeral homes and other businesses like mine, transport businesses and trade services, particularly one thing I've not talked about yet, though, is my embalming business.
Hmm.
And so it's not so much because my business has to be localized. It's not the services themselves that I can offer across the board to everybody in the industry,
Hmm.
but I do have expertise that I can share with everybody. There are opportunities, for example, each state may have a funeral association. And so opportunities for me to speak at those association or at those conventions. I don't know if I'm allowed to plug this, but I've given a TED talk.
Hmm.
Uh, you can look up my TED talk, but that's really what I have to offer is my expertise on these topics. And I hope that people reach out to me because one thing I've learned is that I think we get economics wrong when we think that there is a certain amount of money in the world and we have to compete for our piece of the pie. And I don't think that's true. Um, and so one of the best things you can do is make your competitor your partner.
Hmm.
And so when you see, because you're in your industry or because you're in the funeral industry and you say, I know what things are lacking in this industry, that means my competitors see that lack as well. Can I provide that service to my competitors as well as improve my own? And so that's one thing that makes me unique. A lot of funeral homeowners are very protective of their own business.
Hmm.
And so that becomes them versus everybody else. And it doesn't have to be that way. You can find ways to make a win-win so that you and your competitor profit off of the services that you provide. And so that's really the kind of advice and expertise that I have to offer for any funeral home owners that are looking for a way to be more creative in the space that we're in. One thing that's changed greatly in our industry is the cremation rate.
Hmm.
And some funeral homes and especially cemeteries are struggling with how to adapt to that change. And there are ways that you can do both, that you can have the traditional funeral home and also offer the public what it needs. And so really anybody that's in the funeral space, I feel like I have a lot to offer in advice for their expansion and overcoming some of these current trends.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And what you just shared brings up another question to me. Now, there has been a rise in the crematory services versus the traditional funeral services. Do you mind expanding on that a little bit more of why that is nowadays than it has been in the
Yeah,
past?
absolutely. It's actually interesting if you look at the research. If you were to take a map of the United States and you look at the cremation rates, when you go down to the south where you are,
Mm-hmm.
they're the lowest cremation rates.
Okay.
They still have high burial rates, and as you move to the northwest United States where I am, the cremation rates go higher. And what happens is then you take a second map of the United States that shows the number of traditionally religious people
Mm-hmm.
and you place that over the same map,
Mm.
and it
Mm-hmm.
fits side by side.
I got you.
Now, that's not to say that there's anything at all wrong with cremation, even for religious people. But when I talk about traditionally religious, and I'm referring to Catholics, Baptists, LDS people, they tend to steer more toward burial. That's a cultural thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's that, but we're also more transient. And we didn't, if you're born and raised in the same town and you die there, you know where you're going to be buried.
Mm-hmm.
But people don't do that anymore. They move all the time. They
Right.
move across the country.
Right.
And so it makes more sense to be cremated because you don't want to be buried in a city where you may never have children, grandchildren, or any other relatives even interested in coming to see your grave.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense as well because I see that now with myself. I have been all over the South in my career, and I'm not in Columbus like I was when I first started, and go back to visit friends and family, but I don't have roots there like I did in the past. So that makes a lot of sense why, the cremation would go up some. And I never thought about the religious aspect of things and,
Yeah.
how people are rooted in that. So I definitely appreciate you expanding on that. Now, you have burned the ship multiple times. You have said, hey, look, I'm going to go buy a house, get pregnant, and then go out here and just change up the whole thing. Now, share, if you don't mind, sharing with the audience how burning the ship has just transformed where you are and provided a whole different life that you may have had being a manager at that top 10 company and the reason why they should, look into burning the ship themselves.
Yeah. So it's a requirement.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
know I know that sounds odd, but that's what sets you apart from everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
How come all of your coworkers and I don't look, some people are perfectly happy clocking in and clocking out
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Monday through Friday. Some
Mm-hmm.
people are perfectly happy with that lifestyle
Mm-hmm.
and because it's secure.
Right.
And that's okay. If you want to be secure and not ever take advantage of better and bigger things, that's up to you. But that's what sets you apart because anybody can do what I did, but they're not willing to.
Mm-hmm.
And I have that conversation all the time with when I have somebody in my industry that's frustrated, that wish they had more, wish they had a better, or wish they feel stuck in their career.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell them my story and I say, what did I do that you can't do? And so it's not a matter of ability,
Mm-hmm.
it's a matter of willingness.
Yeah.
And the greater the risk, the greater reward. And one thing I've learned about other business owners and entrepreneurs, you don't have to be the smartest person in the room. You don't have to have the highest college degree. You have to be the one that's willing to make the risks.
Mm-hmm.
And and if you're not willing to burn the ship, if you're not willing to walk away from what's comfortable, you will remain where you are until you retire.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. That statement alone could help that person who is right there on the edge see it and say, hey, why not me? And go ahead and push the button and hit that eject button and go on to bigger and better things. So I definitely appreciate you sharing those words of encouragement for the listeners that are watching. Now, another thing that I would like you to share with the listeners are some of those best practices that you have obviously acquired and nurtured over time that have helped you to be successful. Do you mind sharing another couple of those tidbits that maybe some of the entrepreneurs can add that to their mix today?
Yeah, it may surprise you, but you can know everything there is to know about business. You can be an expert in your field, but if people don't like you,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't matter.
That's right.
And I know that seems really fundamental,
Mm-hmm.
but you have to think of customers as partners
Mm-hmm.
and somebody that they want to work with.
Okay.
And there's a quote, it's been around forever, but it says it's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice.
Mm-hmm.
And and we all have seen people succeed greatly in business who are probably not nice people or who are not kind people. But I have learned that you should never burn a bridge.
Hmm.
And and that includes when you quit your current job, do it in the most gracious way possible
Right.
because that company that you're working for now may be a future customer.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, part of my advice is if you're looking at a business that's going to require you to network and for people to place trust in you, you've got to. I can't think of the number of times that I feel like the customer's wrong,
Hmm.
and I just take it.
Yes.
And I take it with a smile and I apologize, even if I don't think I've got anything to apologize for.
Hmm.
And I think that's incredibly important.
Yes.
You've got to be kind, you've got to be good to work with, and you've got to be willing to just take it sometimes. Because to me, I'm not so interested in how much money can I make from a customer this month. It's how long can I have them as a customer.
Yes. Yes. Thank you so much for sharing that. Be nice, people. You heard him. Just be genuine and just do all you can to take care of what you have, or you'll lose what you have. So,
Yeah, indeed.
so thank you for sharing that. Now, we've talked a lot about your journey. We've talked about the business. We've talked about some of those best practices and business skills. But now I want to turn the page and I want to talk about Lance specifically. So let's just say you continue on your current trajectory, which is going through the atmosphere. I must tell you that. And then time and money is no issue. So now you don't have to spend time in the businesses. You got all the money that you could ever want, Scrooge McDuck style. If that is the case, what is it that Lance would do with his time?
If there's one thing I've learned of being a funeral director for 26 years, it's that stuff doesn't matter,
Hmm.
but people and relationships and experiences do.
Hmm.
And so for me, it's absolutely about taking the time to connect with old friends, traveling the world. This is a big world,
Hmm.
and there's a lot to see and know and experience. And so for me, yeah, I would not stop traveling.
Hmm. Hmm. Now, what's that next big spot that you have on your calendar that you're getting to next?
Boy, that's the question, huh? At some point, I'm going to have to stop looking for opportunities. I, um, yeah, I think at this point, I'm in a really good place,
Hmm.
and my next goal is to start thinking of an exit strategy.
Okay.
And and I don't mean that in a negative way, and I don't mean that it's soon,
Hmm.
but I think that too many people wait till the last year to come up with an exit strategy. And I think that if you have heart and soul in what you've built
Hmm.
and you want to see it continue after you're no longer in it, you've got to be preparing those people now that
Hmm.
are going to take over that position.
Yeah, based off our conversation today, Lance, I honestly can tell you, I thought you were going to say with that question, I'm never going to stop, because it seems like you're all have been so good at finding opportunities, that you can turn into success. I thought you were going to say, I won't stop. I thought you were going to be one of the guys that I'll never stop looking for opportunities. But that's good to see that you do have an end goal in mind, and that is important for people to know.
Yeah, it won't be easy
Okay.
because once you get into that mindset
Yeah.
of looking for opportunity,
Yeah.
it is easy to say I'm just gonna keep doing that forever.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's realistic, and too many people literally work themselves to death.
Hmm.
And there's more to life, believe it or not.
Yes, yes. Makes a lot of sense. Now, if the people that are watching today have questions about your real estate holdings, your embalming business, the crematory, the funeral home, the transportation, or just want to learn a little bit more about Lance, what's the best way for them to get in contact with you?
Sure. So you can email directly at lance@belltowerfuneralhome.com. You can go to my funeral home website, which is belltowerfuneralhome.com. Those are the easiest ways to reach out to me, and I'm happy to answer personal emails. And so I would start there.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you so much for coming on the show today. It's been such a pleasure hearing your story, your journey. And here at Burn the Ship, we always honor our guests by giving you guys the last word. So if you don't mind, Lance, please look into the camera and tell the people something good.
Don't take advice from people you don't want to be like. There, everybody in the world's willing to offer you advice, whether it's business or personal or spiritual, and it may be good advice if you want to become that person. But if that person's not living the life that you want for yourself, don't take that advice.
Awesome. That is magnificent advice. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks so much, Rod.
Absolutely. And to everyone that is watching, be kind and thanks.